Namaste and Swagatam again to the second session of the Introduction to Basic Spoken Sanskrit. In this section, I am going to focus on the sounds of the Sanskrit language, mainly its alphabet. The objectives of this particular session will be the following. I propose to help you understand the mechanism of the sound structures of Sanskrit. There is a very systematic way in which the sounds of this language are produced. So, through this session, I hope to make you aware of which area of our vocal system corresponds to which sounds. Secondly, I will share with you the simple tips on its phonetic logic. You might have heard of the notions of sandhi in Sanskrit. This sandhi of the Sanskrit language is mainly based on the phonetic logic that we find in Sanskrit. The third objective of this session would be to develop an appreciation of the experiential quality of its sounds. I had touched upon it in the introduction, but in this one I hope to delve a little more and to give you a practical experience of what I mean by the experiential quality of its sounds. And finally, I will try to highlight how single aksharas have meanings in themselves, and then how they combine to form words that can mean different things. So the first introduction to the Sanskrit sounds is through its alphabets. So we have the alphabet, which is also known as the Varnamala, which is a very interesting word that is used to denote an alphabet, because Varna means color and Mala means a necklace or a garland. So the alphabet of Sanskrit is not just a collection of sounds or letters put together, but it is really like a garland of colors, which is a very beautiful concept to think of. And then this garland of letters or Varnamala is composed of letters, which in Sanskrit is known as Aksharam. Akshara comes from the word Kshara, which means to be destroyed, and Akshara means that which is indestructible. So again, it invokes questions as to what do we mean that these sounds are indestructible. So I will first like to start by just introducing you to the vocal system, and then we can see how the letters, different letters of the Sanskrit alphabet fit into the whole mechanism of sound production. So what I have drawn here is my representation of the human vocal system. It's a sketch of it and you will be able to understand the different parts. So there are basically 5 places of pronunciation in the Sanskrit language. The first is the throat, which is known as the gutturals or the kanthya. The second is the palatals. So it's when the back of the tongue touches the palate, and it can also be produced when the tongue touches the lower part of the gum area of the lower teeth. Okay, so that's known as the palatals or the talavya. The third one is the center of your palate, which is the murdha or the cerebrals. That was the third one. The fourth is just gently, the tip of the tongue is in between the teeth, and it's known as the dentals or the dantya. And finally, we have the labials or the oshtya. So most of the Sanskrit letters will fall within these 5 regions, and there is a very systematic way in which the sounds have been organized. So I'll present it to you in a manner which I think will be a bit interactive and also help you to memorize the order of these letters in case you ever forget it. So first and foremost, we have vowels, which are simple sounds or natural sounds that the human vocal instrument produces, like I, O. There's no element of touch by the tongue, and in that what I like to do is to place them on our fingers. So the first one that we will do is the A, the sound A. In Sanskrit, the different vowels have different lengths that are attributed to them. So we have the short, which is just 1 beat, then we have the long, which is 2 beats. So the first one was hraswa, dirgha, and then we have the 3 beats, which is pluta. So we have a, a, a. So the a corresponds when you're calling out to someone, come here. So they have incorporated that as a possible length of a vowel. And then we have other varieties or other variations of that in terms of adding a nasal tone to it or not. So nasika and anunasika. So each of these vowels can be pronounced nasally or non-nasally. So we have a or they are different sounds. And finally, we have also got the three tones, the different swaras in the Vedic chanting. So you have the udatta, anudatta and the swarita. So a combination of this roughly brings these vowels to have about 18 combinations. But normally when we talk about the vowels in the Sanskrit alphabet, we refer to only two of them, which is the hraswa and the dirgha. So placing them again on our fingers, the first one is the, I would like to correspond with the thumb. So we have a. The second is the e, which is the palatal sound. Then we have the labial sound, which is oo. These are the three basic vowels that we have. Then we have the cerebral sound, which is the r. This sound undergoes different variations in different parts of the country. But if you put your tongue correctly in the place where it is designated, the shades of pronunciation would be reduced significantly. All right. So this happens when the tongue is gently below the center of the palate. R. And then we have another one which doesn't have much of a usage in the Sanskrit language, but it does appear in certain root words and plays an important role in the entirety to keep the complete structure of the Sanskrit vowels, and that is l. Okay, so it's a dentalized and a little cerebral. So l. All right. So I'll just repeat that once more. We have a, I, u, r, l. Now, the next vowels that we have are mainly the long vowels. They don't have a short version of it. So it will happen when we try to go from a to e. So when you try and roll the sound from a to e in your throat, what happens? Try and do it. So it goes I. The sound that we meet in the middle is the sound a. So that is the next sound of the vowels. So we have a, and then it's a slow motion. So I. Okay. So where does this come handy? We have a word that you're all very familiar with, which is Ganesha. Ganesha is comprised of two words, Gana and Isha. Now when you say these two words very fast, say Ganesha, 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 it will become Ganesha. And that's the logic behind the Sanskrit sandhi or the phonetic consonances. So we have the Ganesha, so A, and then the slow motion, which is I, and then we have the A and the U. So now if you try and go slowly from A to U, what is the sound that you get in the middle? So just try doing it. Go from A. The sound that you will encounter in the middle is the sound O. So the next sound that we have in our vowel system is the O, and I normally depict it like an O in the English. So it's O, and then there's a slow motion next is Ow. And then we have two sounds that are incorporated into the Sanskrit vowel system, which are the Anuswara or the and the is represented by a dot. So I try and represent it physically also with a dot, with a circle. So and then the following one is the Visarga or the aspirate sound, which is the and it's written as two dots. So I sort of show it like that to represent a kind of a letting go. All right. So we have the So we'll do that. I'll just do it again for you. So we have the I, u, r, l. Then you go from A to E. So it's A, slow motion I, from A to U. O, slow motion. Ow, ah. I suggest that you practice just doing these sounds and see what you experience, because there is a huge experiential quality involved in these sounds. The next set of sounds that we see are the consonants. So in the vowels there is no element of touch. The moment we come on to the consonants, we experience the movement of the tongue. The first set of consonants correspond to the throat region. So it is the sounds from k to ng. So it's k, k, g, g, ng. Now how do we produce that? So the first one, if you just explore what is really the mechanism in your throat, what is happening in your throat to produce the sound k. If you try it out, you will see that there is an element of touch k, plus there is an addition of the vowel a, so which makes it k, a, k. You have to be very careful and make sure that you don't include any breath into it. So it's not a k, h, k. The second letter that you have is the aspirated one, which is the k. Okay, so it's in the same place, the same kind of touch and sound, and with a breath in it. So k. The third one is the g. So if you want to just try and see what is the difference between the k and the g, you will notice that in the sound k, there is first an element of touch followed by a sound, whereas in the g, there is first an element of sound followed by a touch. So they are known as the unvoiced and the voiced pairs. So k and k are the unvoiced, and g are the voiced. All right. So we have the g, which is g. You hear the sound first, so, and then the touch happens with the g, and then the breath g. And the fifth sound is the nasal, which is keeping your attention in the same part of your throat. You just nasalize that sound. So it becomes a combination, and it is the ng. Try that out. Ng. Very good. So we have now k, k, g, g, ng. Right? Now, there is a certain logic in the organization of these letters. So the first one is a touch sound, in which case you have a k, a, k. The second letter has the touch sound breath, k, a, h. So k. The third one has a sound touch, g. The fourth one has a sound touch breath, g. And the fifth one is a nasal, ng. Now remember this logic, because this is the logic that will be followed as the sound comes out of the human vocal system. So we have touch sound breath, sound touch breath, nasal, k, k, g, g, ng. You can actually keep your mouth in the same position and produce all 5 sounds, k, k, g, g, ng. It's quite amazing when you try and do it and you notice and you become aware of the actual experience or the mechanical awareness of how these sounds are being produced. Okay, so the next set of letters are the palatals, the number 2. So like I said, it can happen when the back of the tongue is touching the back of the palate, as well as the tongue is in the touching the lower teeth. So we have a ch, ch, j, jh, ñ. Exactly the same logic. Touch sound breath, sound touch breath, nasal. We try that. Ch, ch, j, jh, ñ. The tongue stays exactly in the same place. The following sounds are the cerebrals. The second one was the palatals. Now we move on to the cerebrals, and the cerebrals happen when the tip of the tongue touches the center of the palate. So if you have the palate like that, just try and become aware of the tongue and touch the center of that palate. If you want to also make it more obvious, you can even touch the roof of your palate with your fingertip, and then place your tongue there. So that particular sound is the t, th, d, dh, na. So this series is known as the Murdha in Sanskrit, and we have the touch of the tongue in the center of your palate. We'll do it once more. T, th, d, dh, na. Very good. Next we move on to the dentals or the dantya, where the tongue is slightly sticking out from in between your teeth, slightly, or it's exactly behind the teeth. So it's there's slight sticking out of the tongue there. So t, th, d, dh, na. Very good. Once more. T, th, d, dh, na. Next we move on to the labials. So the labials are when the lips come together, and we have the series which is the oshtya, the labials. We can say the sounds are as follows: p, p, b, bh, m. These are the easiest sounds that we can produce because it doesn't require any kind of flexibility of your tongue, and therefore you would notice that children, when they speak, when they start speaking, these are the first sounds that they can produce easily. The pa, pa, ma, ma, ba, ba. You know, they're the easiest ones that don't require any development of other muscles of the tongue, etc. So we've looked at these 25 basic consonants that are there, that correspond to the 5 areas of touch. So we have the k, kh, g, gh, the guttural or the kanthya series in the throat. The second one are the talavya or the palatal series of the ch, ch, j, jh, nya in the palate. The third one are the murdha or the murdhanya series that are produced in the murdha. They are the cerebrals that are produced when the tongue touches the top of your palate. So we have the series t, th, d, dh, n. Then we come on to the to the dentals, which is the fourth series, which are also the dantya, and they are the t, th, d, dh, n. And finally we come on to the labials or the oshtya, which are the p, p, b, bh, m. Now if you've noticed, there is something very amazing that is happening when you're just producing these letters here. If you see the order in which these sounds have been placed are actually following the order in which sound is coming out of the human vocal system. Now isn't that amazing to think of an alphabet that has organized sound in a manner that follows systematically the order in which sound is coming out of the human system. Fine. We have next a few more consonants, which are the semi-vowels. Now the semi-vowels are a combination of the vowels, but in the reverse order from what we saw it in the vowel section. So when we were talking of the vowels, we had a to e was a when you went that way. Now when you go in the reverse direction, you have e to a. So if you try and do that fast, what do you get? Yeah, we will get the y. Similarly, we have r to a, which is the r, l to a, which is the l, and u to a, which is the w. So y, r, l, and v. Now I'll just show that to you on the screen again. So a corresponds to a throat. A is a throat sound. So when we go from e to a, so you get the y, then r to a becomes the r, and then we have the l, the l, which corresponds to the teeth. L to a is the l, and the u to a becomes the v. There are some people who tend to pronounce it as a v all the time, but in the Panini's grammar, it is designated as a dantoshthyam, which means that teeth have to come on the lips. So it's a v sound. In certain contexts, it does get pronounced as a v, but that is when it becomes, when it is combined with other words like swara. It's very odd to say swara. Whereas viryam, it's very easy to say viryam. It gives a different energy than viryam, for example. Okay, so now what do we notice? We see that when we went from ka to, we did the ka up to the ma, we followed the order in which sound comes out of the vocal system. And now when we are doing yara, lava, we are suddenly going back into the system itself. So it's like yara, lava, all the way back. And then we have what we call the sibilants, which are like the sh kind of sounds. Sanskrit has 3 of them, and each of them corresponds to a very specific place of pronunciation. So the sh, the first talavya sh is the word for sh, is used in shanti, is the sh from the like the ch family. It is the sh. The next one is the murdhanya sh, which is from corresponds to the area of the cerebral or the murdha. It is the sh. So you have to be very precise in the pronunciations of these different sounds, and I'll tell you why it is so important to do so. So when you pronounce it with the sh, it's like you have the word ashta, the 8, or shanmukha. So that is when the sh is a murdhanya sh. And then we have the other one, which is the s, which is the regular dental s for the snake or the sarpa, and that's from the dentals. So we see again, what are we doing here? We are again sort of going back to this order of the reverse order. So talavya, murdha, and then the dantya. It's in a sense also coming out. And then we have the ha, which is the which is like a throat sound. It's a mahaprana sound, which is the ha. Do that? Ha. Great. So we have now seen how all these letters correspond to the different areas of the touch of our vocal system very systematically. And what is remarkable here is that unlike in certain languages like English, for example, where we do not have this dental sounds at all, in the entire language we don't have the dental sounds like t, th, d, dh. You only have something in between the t, which is the murdha, and the dental t. We have a tomorrow, which strikes in between the two positions. In contrast, you have other languages, the Romanesque languages like French or Spanish or Italian. In these languages, they do not have any of the cerebral sounds or the English t's. So they only have the t, th, d. So when they try and speak English, you would hear them saying tomorrow, because the language in which their tongues have been formatted is unfamiliar with that particular possession of pronunciation. So coming from that, we notice that with Sanskrit, because there is a very systematic recognition of the areas of sounds produced by these different regions, it allows the tongue a great deal of flexibility of movement, as well as training the ear for knowing these sounds. So I'll now show you the letters as they are depicted in the Sanskrit language. So we saw the first simple vowels, which were a, I, u, r, that corresponded to the 5 places of pronunciation. And then we had the combined sounds, which were also known as the diphthongs. So that is when we go from a to I. So when we go between them, we get the a and I, sorry. We get the A and the I. Alright, so the next one, so this is when we are going from A to Is. The next one is when we go from A, I to U. Alright, so we have like that. And what happens in that case is that we get the O and the OW, like we had seen on the hands, you remember? So the same thing is here. And we have all these ones plus the which is the Anuswara, and the Visargaha, which is the aha. So we'll see the consonants next. So we see that we have the Sanskrit consonants, or known as the Vyanjanas also. So Vyanjanani, because it's a neuter word. We have 33 of them that correspond again to the 5 places of pronunciation. So we have the gutturals or the kanthas, which are k, kh, g, gh, ng. We have the palatals or the talavyas, which are ch, ch, j, jh, nya. Then we have the cerebrals, which are the t, th, d, dh, n. And then we have the dentals, which are the t, th, d, dh, n, also the dantyas. And then the labials or the ostias, which are the p, p, b, bh, m. Following this, we have the semi-vowels, which are, or the antasthas, which are y, r, l, v. The sibilants or the ushmas, which are sh, sh, s. And then the aspirate or the mahaprana sound, h. So the 16 vowels along with these 33 consonants give us the 49 basic letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. But we also see a lot of combinations that occur between the consonants and between different consonants. So 3 of them that are very popular and that get used often in the Sanskrit language are the ksha, tr and jnya. So the ksha is a combination of k and sh, ksha. The tr is a tr, tr. And the jnya, which is often pronounced variously in different parts of the country, is actually a combination of the two sounds j and nya. So when we put j and nya together, very logically it should be the jnya and not the nya or gya or something else. So in Sanskrit, the j plus nya is really the jnya. So jnya, you go over the j very fast. Jnya, fine. Now, like I've said, we also find that the consonants combine with the different vowels. So here I've given you a combination of the k with the different vowels, which are k, ka, ki, kuku, kr, kr, klr, klr, ke, kai, ko, kau, kam, ka. So you can practice this at your own pace and become familiar with these different sounds. But the reason for putting up these sounds is that you can notice how the symbols of the different vowels are added to the consonants, and these symbols will remain the same while these different consonants combine with the different vowels. Now, because the focus of this course is really on the spoken Sanskrit, I will not go into the written aspect too much, or rather more than this in detail. So you can use whatever has been presented to you and other resources to learn the written aspect as well. Now, the beauty of the written aspect is this, that they say if you could take a picture of the sound that you produce, it would correspond to the images that are there to depict these particular letters in the Sanskrit alphabet, which is really a fantastic thing, because it means that there is a direct correspondence, or there is a transparent relationship between the sound of the word and the picture that is utilized to depict that sound of the word. So therefore they say that when you write these particular letters, they also correspond to the same experience as you pronounce the sound of those words. So can you imagine the 3 levels of correspondences that we have seen thus far? There is the sound of the word, there is the written representation of the word, and there is the experience of that sound and the written word. So therefore there is a certain transparency in all these levels of representation of the very foundations of the Sanskrit language. Now, some of the benefits of reciting the alphabet. The first is that there is a very big physiological benefit that we experience through the pronunciation or the recitation of the Sanskrit alphabet. As we have seen that there is a very systematic touch of the tongue in all these different parts of our vocal system, which in turn correspond to a systematic touch in our brains of all those different letters. So I normally a bit jokingly say that this is almost like a brain massage. So reciting Sanskrit is something like a brain massage that one gives oneself. Those parts of our brains then correspond to different parts of our body physiologically. So in languages where we don't have, let's say, the whole cerebral series like the French, Italian, etc., physiologically those parts of your mouth or your brain are never really stimulated. Similarly, when you have an absence of the dentals, like in the English language, physiologically those parts of your mouth or in your brain are never really stimulated. So in that context, Sanskrit becomes like a very wholesome brain massage package, just to make it an interesting presentation. Another important aspect of the Sanskrit recitation of the Sanskrit alphabet is that we see a very conscious use of the breath. So it's k, k, g, g. This usage of the breath acts like a natural pranayama, where there is a de-stressing that takes place subconsciously. So you do ka, kha, ga, gha, and then we have a lot of the aspirated of the visarga, balaka, gachati. So when do we do this in life? We do it when we tend to de-stress or we express a sigh of relief. So this expression of the sigh of relief is somehow incorporated into the language itself. So Sanskrit acts like a very natural de-stressor when you become fluent in speaking this language. And therefore, besides being a language just of communication or even of creation, there is a certain physiological benefit in just speaking this language. Another aspect of this language, when they talk of the yogic anatomy, is they say that these different letters correspond to the different energy vortexes in our system, which are known as the chakras. So the main vowels correspond to the throat chakra or the Vishuddha chakra, and just a recitation of that then stimulates all the different subtle aspects of the throat region. The next 12 letters correspond to the heart chakra or the Anahata chakra. The next 10 correspond to the Manipura chakra, which correspond to the navel chakra. Then we have the next corresponding to the Swadhisthana chakra. The next 6 of them correspond to that chakra. And finally, we have the final 4 that correspond to the Mooladhara chakra. And therefore, we see that we have gone up to 48 there. The last 2, which are the Ha and the Ksha, correspond to the Ajna chakra. So what we are doing literally when we recite the Sanskrit alphabet is that with the vowels we are in the throat, and then we are literally going down as if in a spiraling screw all the way down to the Mooladhara, and then going up with the Ha and Ksha to the Ajna. So it's literally like creating a vortex of the energy system and sending it all back to the third eye chakra or the Ajna chakra. This is something that you can just practice, keep your eyes closed and try and experience the effect of these sounds in your system, and you will start understanding what is being implied by experiencing the power of these sounds. Another important aspect of the Sanskrit, spoken Sanskrit, is that it acts like a speech therapy. As we have seen that there is a very systematic understanding of the mechanism involved in these sounds. Therefore, they use Sanskrit letters in order to refine one's speech and identify defects that people have in their speech production. I was also told very recently that a very senior singer suffered a paralytic stroke which had impaired their speech mechanism, and it is by the continuous usage of mantras and recitation of different Sanskrit things that that individual got back his speech and is now one of the most famous singers of the country. So these are some of the fantastic benefits that we can experience by just sounding Sanskrit. Finally, because of the understanding of the relationship between the areas of production of speech and the pronunciation of those sounds, it serves to fine-tune the hearing and speech mechanism, which in turn helps an individual to acquire new languages more easily. So if one starts becoming conscious of this entire speech mechanism and train one's system to produce them in different contexts of Sanskrit, usage of Sanskrit, then it subconsciously trains the body to be able to catch the sounds of foreign languages or different languages and reproduce them. So that's also another important aspect of the sound. I will just quickly go through certain aspects of the sounding of this language. So we have the aspect of the mantra quality of the Sanskrit. So Sri Aurobindo says, the theory of the mantra is that it is a word of power born out of the secret depths of our being, where it has been brooded upon by a deeper consciousness than the mental, framed in the heart and not constructed by the intellect, held in the mind, again concentrated on by the waking mental consciousness, and then thrown out silently or vocally, precisely for the work of creation. The mantra can not only create new subjective states in ourselves, alter our psychical being, reveal knowledge and faculties we did not before possess, can not only produce similar results in the minds than that other than that, can not only produce similar results in other minds than that of the user, but can produce vibrations in the mental and vital atmosphere which results in effects, in actions, and even in the production of material forms on the physical plane. Now, this particular, it's just like 2 lines here, but again, a deep contemplation on this can make us aware of how fantastic this whole science of mantra really is. In other words, I tend to give the simple technical definition of a mantra. Mantra is nothing but systematized sound technology, where sounds have been placed in such a manner that they will necessarily correspond to certain effects in different planes of our existence, in the physical plane as well as in the emotional, mental, and spiritual planes. Because at the end of the day, if we can reduce everything to the level of vibrations, energy, then everything is vibrating, and the human being becomes a collection of these different vibrations. Now, this was a deep understanding within the Indian tradition, and they used mantras to change, or rather to reformat, restructure the vibratory patterns of our nature, of who we are. You have definitely heard of the importance of the sound Om. I will just again very briefly talk to you about the sound Om and maybe help us understand why physiologically it becomes such an important sound to produce. So the sound Om can be broken up into A, U and M. The sound A is the very first sound that the human vocal instrument can produce. The sound U is the last sound that the human vocal instrument can produce. And then you have, when you go from A to U, so O is the sound in the middle. So when we go from A to U, it covers the entire range that the human vocal system can really produce. So if you put it on a string like that, the maximum resonance on the string will happen when you pluck it in the center. So the O is this plucking in the center. So when we do the Om, the entire range of human's potential sound is generated, or rather it is made to vibrate. The M is the sound of establishment. If you close your eyes and do the it will correspond to a kind of a settling down, an establishment. So the sound M contains the entire production of the sound O. So Om, where the A corresponds to being, existence, the U corresponds to the collecting of everything and the giving to everything, and M corresponds to the establishment of things, of the different vibrations within us. So just with a combination of the Aum, we are actually helping the entire vocal system to be stimulated. Now the beauty of this range and its connection with the universe is that this is the only part of the human system that can reproduce all the sounds of creation. So when one does the Om, one basically allows the entire cosmos to start vibrating at a certain level. And then with the one makes it into a contained potential. So a practice of the Om is highly recommended in general because it allows this entire range to be stimulated and its potential to be generated. We find these A, U, M combinations as important sounds in different traditions as well. So we have the Amen, Amin, etc. that we recognize in different cultures. And finally, I would like to conclude with this small section of the word formation by combining meaningful letters. So we have the different, in this word kha, ga, two sounds which are kha and ga. So kha by itself means space and ga means to go or move. So khaga is that which moves in space. So it can correspond to anything. If we are talking of this, whatever moves in the sky, you would probably think of either a plane or the cloud or the bird. So in this particular context, it tends to refer more to the bird, but technically it could refer to any of the others as well. And the aha at the end, the visarga at the end, tells us its position in the sentence. So when we say khagaha, it implies that this word or this object, which is the bird, is the subject. It is doing something in our thought. The second word that I would like to describe in brief, but it is very interesting, is the word hridaya. So hridaya refers to heart. Now if I told you the English word heart in itself, it would not really give you any clue about what the heart does. But when we look at it as hridaya, it is comprised of three sounds, the hr, the d and the y. Now this is one way of understanding this word, okay. So the hr is the root, which means to remove, the to give or the dati, and y means to move or to circulate. So within these three words of hr, the, y, the remover, the giver and the circulator, we have practically the whole function of the heart that has been described. Now isn't that wonderful? And even the word heart has its origins in the word hrit, the Sanskrit word hrit, which means the heart itself. Alright. The final word that I would like to touch on very briefly, and you find different occasions to elaborate on it, is the word sukha. Sukha usually corresponds to happiness, but when we ask ourselves what do we mean by happiness, it can mean many things. So is happiness pleasurable experiences, or is it when we get something, is that happiness, or is it a state of mind, etc. So when we look at the word sukha, it is comprised of su and kha. Su means excellent, and kha can mean two things. As we saw in khaga, it can mean space, but it can also mean the limbs of the body. So when we are talking of sukha in terms of excellent experiences for the limbs, then this term refers to pleasurable experiences, which is the usual connotation of this word. But if we understand that sukha means excellent spaces, then it allows us to go into the entire psychology of what happiness really means. What do we mean by happy spaces? Are these spaces excellent outside, or are these spaces referring to internal excellent spaces? Which space needs to be excellent? So this is something that you can think about, and I will see if on another occasion we can talk about this in greater detail. But do contemplate on sukha as excellent spaces, and see how an understanding of this term in this particular way can give us the secret of happiness itself, because then all we need to do to experience happiness is manage our internal and external spaces and ensure that they are excellent. So in this session I have basically covered the different sounds of the Sanskrit language and try to give you an idea of how words are formed by putting these different sounds together, where one word can mean many things depending on the context, and many words can mean one thing. And also how words in Sanskrit are not just creators of experiences, but they can also give us psychological insights as to how the word has originated and what are the psychological changes that we need to do in order to experience the true meaning of the words. So thank you very much. Namaste, Dhanyavada, and see you again in the following session.